This podcast is sponsored by the Fargo-Moorhead West Fargo Chamber of Commerce. The Chamber is a catalyst for growth and prosperity and is here to protect and promote business, inspire innovation, cultivate communities, and influence action. Learn more at fmwfchamber.com.
Hi there, everyone, and thanks for tuning in to another episode of the In-Forum Business Beat podcast. As always, I'm your host, Thomas Evanella. We've got a different format than usual this week. We wanted to highlight a recent story from my fellow reporter Helmut Schmidt, outlining ways consumers can stay on top of things in this volatile economy. Now, if you happen to miss Helmut's story, one major area of concern for consumers is the housing market. Interest rates have been climbing at a dizzying pace, and it's nearly impossible to keep up with the headlines. To give us a lowdown on the home buying market, we sat down with Kari Myhre of Park Company Realtors here in Fargo. While Kari knows the market is pretty scary for buyers, she still believes it's a good time to get into a new home in our area. Once again, this will be a different format than usual for us, but if you're looking to catch up on the latest business headlines instead, go to inforum.com/business. With all that in mind, let's turn it over to Kari. Kari, thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks for having me.
So to get things started right off the bat here, tell us a bit about yourself and some of your background, your experience as a realtor.
Well, I've been selling real estate since 1984, so that's 38 years, and I've seen a lot of markets kind of come and go here. When I started, of course, interest rates were a lot higher, 14, 15%, so we had to be pretty creative back then on financing.
And so what's the latest you've seen here in the market, here in the Fargo market? What are kind of some of the trends you've seen? You said that your history goes back quite a ways, so you've seen a lot of things come and go. How would you categorize things today?
Well, typically the fall market is a slower market, but I have seen a slowdown with the rising interest rates this year. I think people are holding back just a little bit, maybe getting creative with their lender on how to still get into a house. And so, I have seen a slowdown, but it's typical too also this time of year.
And speaking of the interest rates then, how do interest rates today compare historically from what you've seen?
Well, I think they're hanging around 6% right now, maybe a little bit under. And so, we were very spoiled. We were at 2 and 3% for, a number of years, and that spoiled us. So actually, 6, 7% is really a great rate when you consider, but 7% is a higher rate than what we've seen for a number of years.
And one of the specific groups of buyers that I am interested in focusing on is first-time buyers. Just with the interest rate situation right now and just the state of the economy in general, I'd imagine it's really a scary time to be a first-time home buyer. So how many first-time buyers do you deal with, and what have you been saying to them? What sort of guidance do they receive?
Well, first of all, I think it's always important that they visit the lender and get into a program that works for them. And, we do a lot of guidance along the way, but I don't think they should be afraid of purchasing. There's still an awful lot of people that think you have to have a ton of money down, and you don't. You can actually get in with about 3.5% of your own cash. So it is affordable, but, getting a good lender, whether you get a referral or somebody certainly that would be a good starting point. See what you have to do. And
how would you say the reality of the market compares to sort of what gets portrayed publicly and what sort of the public perception is of the current real estate market then?
Well, I think we've always kind of lived in kind of a protected area, the Midwest, and certainly Fargo-Moorhead doesn't ebb and flow like the coastlines, maybe even Minneapolis. And so I think we're pretty fortunate here. Right now, we don't have a lot of homes on the market, which is a little unusual. It was down in the spring, and it still is down, but I would expect that after the holidays, we'll see a few more sellers out there.
And why do you think that might be the case then? Is that there's a slowdown in construction, or people are just not really interested in selling right now? What do you attribute that to?
Well, I think a lot of people would sell if they had something to buy, whether they're moving down or moving up. I think that they would move if they had some place to go to. And so certainly downsizing gets to be tricky sometimes. First-time buyers, it's relatively easy because they're still living with mom and dad or they're renting an apartment. And so we don't have a property to sell to move ahead with.
And going back a little bit, you made an interesting comment that's something I've heard speaking to other realtors and home builders, is that the Fargo market tends to be a little more insulated than some of the other bigger national markets. Why do you think that is? And is that sort of a positive for buyers and sellers, would you say?
Yeah, I'd say it's absolutely a positive. I think we haven't seen, the real high prices or the real low prices. We stay fairly stable, and we're not all based on one industry here either. We have several colleges, the hospital system. So there's a lot of employers, and we're not just all reliant on a plant, for example.
And that makes for a more stable investment then, would you say?
I would say so. I think real estate is always a good investment. A lot of people pick up rentals for that reason because of the college students and things in town.
And so what do you kind of see coming up in 2023 for the home buying market then? What's the next thing that people should be aware of?
Well, I think they should do their homework and, get in touch with a good realtor, whether it's somebody you know or somebody you get referred to, and get some counseling, and you can get some listings sent to you, and you can visit open houses. There's lots of ways on finding a new home and getting some advice and some help on a purchase agreement.
And overall then, what's kind of the biggest piece of advice that you've been giving to buyers and sellers that you've been interacting with over the past few years?
I'd say be patient. Sometimes it just takes patience, especially our spring market. Things were selling for a lot more than asking price. And so those people that kind of hung in there and were patient, ended up getting a pretty nice house by summer when prices came down just a tad.
So things are moving kind of quickly, but you just got to wait to get to the right situation then?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And if one house gets away, I always say there's a better one down the road. So
it could quite literally be down the road, not even just figuratively.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And overall then, give us a sense of how this market compares to your time as a realtor then. What would you say how does this compare to other times that you've been through? Obviously, 2008 is probably the biggest crisis that comes to mind for people. Are we at that level? Are we anywhere close to that?
Well, I don't think so. I think that was more the banking crisis in 2008. I remember at that time, President Obama was giving away money so that people would turn around and buy. I don't see that desperation right now. One thing that I really noticed is how quickly the interest rates went up this year. They started out around 2.5% in January, and they hit 7% last month. Now, thankfully, they have gone down from there again, but that's a pretty quick rise in interest rates. And I realize they're trying to slow down the market and slow down inflation.
Have you seen a rise happen this quickly in interest rates?
No, I haven't. Usually they adjust, maybe 1% or something a year or every 6 months, but not this quickly, I guess.
So there's kind of a lot to sort through with interest rates and everything. And like I mentioned before, the state of the economy. But overall, then you would say that this is still a good time to be a buyer and it's a good time to be a seller then?
I would say so. Certainly renting doesn't get you very far. And if you think you're going to be in town for at least 2 years, I think it's a good time to buy. I have had very few people lose money when they have resold again. And if you live in the house at least the last 2 out of 5 years, you don't pay any capital gains. So it is a good time to buy, always.
And once again, that was Kari Myhre from Park Company Realtors here in Fargo. Kari, thank you so much for being with us today.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
That does it for this episode of the Inforum Business Beat podcast. As always, this has been your host, Thomas Evanella. Join me again next week, but visit inforum.com/business to stay up to date in the meantime.